Hi, I'm Benjamin Bernstein, and thank you for attending my astrology lecture. I'm so grateful that you all are here tonight. Tonight we're going to be looking at the astrology of this spring and a little bit into the rest of 2014. And the feature event I'll be focusing on is the Cardinal Grand Cross. And this is the strongest astrological event I have ever seen in my years as a professional astrologer. Just to check in, who here has noticed that things have gotten really intense lately? Yeah, me too. I've had two major challenges in a week, and I don't usually have even one, so something's up. So I'll be telling you what's up with those energies, how to work with them positively and productively, and then we are going to also do some individual charts. So if any of you know your birth data, and especially if you know that you're being affected by the Cardinal Grand Cross, you are welcome to, I'll put your chart up on the screen, and by advising individual people, the kind of things I'm saying will actually be helpful in helping you understand whatever's going on for you. So it will be a helpful event all the way around. So let's roll into the slideshow. Let me give myself a little more room. Okay. So first, a little bit about myself. It's good to know the credentials of the person who's talking to you. I've worked with over 5,000 clients. I host an audio podcast called This Week in Astrology, which is iTunes' #1 astrology podcast. And I recently started a video version, the This Week in Astrology video forecast that I put up on YouTube every week. And you can link to all that from my website. You all should have gotten a little business card at your seat. In case you didn't, the website is astroshaman.com. And that clipboard that's going around, I will be giving away a free session at the end of the night. Y'all remind me if I forget. And someone here will win a free 1-hour session with me. So, I was very proud that in the last Mountain Express popularity poll, I was voted the second best astrologer in Western North Carolina. The #1 astrologer is very well too. And I have lectured or taught at 5 national astrology gatherings. Every couple of months I write an astrology forecast for the Natural Awakenings here in Western North Carolina. And was proud last year to be published in an astrology book for the first time. It was a book called Transpersonal Astrology, Explorations at the Frontier, and my chapter on shamanic astrology was included. So those are some of my astrology credentials. Some of you also know me as a shamanic healer. And in that capacity, I do my best to facilitate powerful healings and spiritual awakenings in my clients. I have over 30 years of spiritual practice in a wide range of modalities, most recently ayahuasca and San Pedro plant spirit medicine, and was in Diksha Oneness Blessing for many years, and now am teaching my own invocation system. So that's another side, and I may be bringing in some of those experiential viewpoints as we move forward tonight. And here's the free 1-hour session slide. Again, if you haven't already, then you can grab the sign-up sheet that's going around and put down your name and email on there, and I will draw a free winner at the end of the night. Must be present to win. That's about life itself, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. If you do sign the list, it will get you my free weekly email newsletter where I put out the week's astrology forecast and other content as well. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe with one click and be done with it. So, not that onerous a situation if you don't care for the newsletter. All right, so the future is our call. A less helpful question is, what fate do the planets have in store for us? Oh my God. A more helpful question is, how can we consciously partner with the planets to co-create the reality which serves everyone's highest need? There are some people who think of astrology fatalistically, and they want to know what's going to happen to me. And that sort of implies a victim consciousness, you know, so it's as if you have no say in the matter. In fact, the planets are conscious beings. That shamanic astrology chapter I mentioned in the Transpersonal Astrology book is all about how to speak directly to the conscious entity that is that planet's force. Say, hey, can you behave better, please? You know, because every planet in astrology has a low side and a high side. And if you understand what the high side potential is of the planet, then you can invoke that. And what I've observed in my years as an astrologer is the more you actively cultivate the high side potential of that planet, the less energy it has left over to give you trouble. So your conscious cooperation is very much a part of the picture. Okay. So what I want to do for the next few minutes is give you the overview of the big picture, which is like the slowest planets and the signs they're in. This overview is very important to understand to kind of grok the more specific things that are happening this year. So there are 3 planets I'll be talking about in general: Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. They are the 3 outer planets in astrology. They're called generational planets because they stay in every sign for a long time, many years, and they affect not just you, but whole generations of people. Uranus is one of them, one of my favorite planets. Okay, there are certain keywords that apply to these planets. Uranus is the humanitarian, the revolutionary, scientist, skeptic, genius, individualist, original, paradigm shift, rebellion, shock, awakening, surprise. So you get the vibe of him, Mr. Lightning Bolt, all right? So he has been in Aries since 2010, and Uranus in Aries is the energy combination of pioneering new beginnings, boldly embracing innovation and revolution, and knowing that the future is ours to make. So those are some keywords for Uranus in its current sign. Now Pluto is the slowest outer planet that I use. Keywords for him: transformation, sex, death and rebirth, transpersonal power, oligarchy, and wealth. An astrologer named Rick Levine gave me a wonderful phrase for Pluto a while back. He said it's a tsunami moving at the speed of a glacier. Other keywords or phrases are a phoenix burning to ash and resurrecting, a snake shedding its skin, and a caterpillar morphing into a beautiful butterfly. So Pluto's about transformation. And Pluto is now in Capricorn. The last time he was in Capricorn was 1762 through 1778. Then we had the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence. James Watt perfected the steam engine, which accelerated the Industrial Revolution, which of course changed everything. So Pluto makes huge changes that have powerful downstream effects. The United States independence, sparked democracy around the world in the years that followed. The steam engine, Industrial Revolution, and the world doesn't look anything like it did before that happened. Right? So right now, when I first did this slide, Big Brother is watching you. It was when Pluto first went in 2008, and it seemed a little bit grim. And that was before we learned about the NSA. So Big Brother really is watching us. There's video cameras all over the place. I have one set up on me, but that's on purpose. But, we're under surveillance. If you make a phone call or send an email, there's a very good chance some agency or entity will interrupt it and intercept it and could look at it. So privacy is rapidly becoming a thing of the past under Pluto and Capricorn. But there's been some good changes as well. The thing about Pluto and Capricorn is the sign of the old existing structures. And Pluto says, if they don't work anymore, my job is to destroy them, okay, or transform them. So when Pluto hit Capricorn, we started seeing, then we really saw what the banks were really all about. We saw the just endemic greed and corruption going on in the banking industry. And we have far fewer illusions now than we did back in 2008. We know that the corporate powers do some very naughty things. Okay? So wherever Pluto goes, he's Lord of the underworld, and his job is to go down in all that nasty muck and dig it up and say, look at this, this is what's happening. All right? So now we see in all the things that Capricorn represents, which is institutions, big religion, any big entity of massive size. That's what Pluto, Capricorn rules, large corporate kind of entities. We're seeing what's really going on there now. Okay? So Pluto is kind of like actually some keywords for Pluto are the detective and the investigator. He's down there to see what's really behind the scenes. And whatever sign he goes into, all the themes of that sign get exposed. Okay? So, now that you understand Uranus and Pluto, we can talk about the fact that they're in a square. Okay? A square in astrology is a 90-degree aspect, just 90 degrees apart, a right angle. And when you get Uranus and Pluto together doing this, what you get is potential crises everywhere. It could be social, political, economic. It does catalyze evolution in a very aggressive way. We get resistance and upheaval. Reform gets integrated. There can be dramatic advances, and it exposes unconscious and subversive forces that limit progress. Is anyone noticing any of this happening in the world these days? Yeah, we're right on schedule. And it's restless change. So the square here Started energetically in 2008, and it goes till probably 2018, maybe 2019, depending on how you calculate their closeness to each other. The peak years are now, 2012 through 2015. And it is the most volatile astrology since the 1960s. You all know what happened in the 60s, right? We have a few survivors here. Okay? I was born in 1960, but I was too young to appreciate it. Okay? What you get under these kind of energies is frequently destructive upheaval, revolution and rebellion, intensified artistic and intellectual creativity. Didn't some of the greatest music come out of the 60s? Don't we have a whole new musical renaissance happening now, right? And other areas too. Rapid technological advance. I mean, every iPhone is outdated 6 months later, you know. Who even knew what an iPad was 3 years ago? You know, it's like, wow, things are changing so fast. Rapid technological advance, as I said, and innovation are also hallmarks of this energy. Very volatile, very creative, okay? Now, just for some perspective on this current Uranus-Pluto time, which is the heart of the Grand Cross I'm going to focus on soon. Okay, what happened in the 60s when Uranus and Pluto were conjunct? That's the strongest they get, is when they're right together on top of each other. They were exactly conjunct 1964 through 1966, and energetically 1960 through 1972. Okay, so what happened then? Civil rights and feminist movements, anti-war demonstrations, 32 African countries gained independence. China had their cultural revolution. Eastern European countries demonstrated against communism. Arab-Israeli conflicts, the Bay of Pigs Cuban Missile Crisis. Sounds pretty serene, doesn't it? So Uranus and Pluto, whenever they make what's called a quadrature aspect, when they're together, when they're at a right angle, when they're opposing, or when they're at the other right angle, things get really intense. And if you would like to explore this more deeply, the classic book on the subject is called Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. That's T-A-R-N-A-S. And that is, I don't know an astrologer who does not consider that the definitive book on how the movement of the outer planets through the sky shape human history on all levels. Political, social, cultural, you name it, it's happening when those guys get together. So if you want to go deeper, that's the definitive work, and he assumes you know nothing about astrology and fills it all in as you go. It's also 650 pages, so you got to be serious. He only took 30 years to write. All right, so what's happening right now under the current Uranus-Pluto square? Dominant power structures collapsing, climate crises, disasters and catastrophes. I mean, it used to be when there was a mass shooting or something like that, it was a big deal. And now it's happening almost every day. Okay, the energies are getting volatile and intense. Okay, one of my mottos for this time is wake up or go crazy. I vote for waking up. We have technological explosion, economic instability, paradigm shifts, and into the unknown. I mean, could you believe just the other day Bill Clinton talked about extraterrestrials?
Did he?
And yeah, he was being interviewed and he said, yeah, when I was White House, I had people look into it. I think that's probably happening.
Nice.
So who knows when they'll finally reveal themselves to the world, you know? But, you know, we're at a time when incredible things can happen. I mean, who would have predicted 5 years ago that gay marriage would now be legal in so many states and absolutely being supported at the federal government level? Who would have imagined that?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have imagined the legalization of marijuana in several states 5 years ago? It seemed like an impossible dream back then, right? So things can happen, wonderful things can happen very rapidly under this time. You know, your sky is the limit, really, at this time. So we have more holistic and inclusive perspectives emerging. So to me, the core question is, how can we shift from separation to unity consciousness? Or as Eckhart Tolle would say, how can the ego be tamed in order for life to continue? Because if we don't awaken collectively, the wake-up calls just get louder. And let me tell you my impression of what's happening right now, which is I think there's a mass awakening going on globally. And I think we're now in a new golden age. I think the 2012 winter solstice really marked a turning point for that when the Mayan calendar ended. There wasn't a huge thing in the physical world, but those who felt inside could feel a shift at that point. And since then I've seen more and more people awakening, you know, and it is now getting common. You know, if you believe the Oneness University website, there's now, tens of millions of people who are awake. I mean, and tens of thousands more every month moving into awakening. I mean, that's a lot of people. Okay, I know several dozen here in Asheville who are literally awake. So it's not a pipe dream. It's not a thing for the guru in the Himalayas. It's happening now to regular folks. So it's possible. All right, so what revolutionary transformation will we planetary citizens visualize into being? So I want to also cover a third planet. I will not be talking a lot about Neptune after this overview, but I just want to mention Neptune in Pisces. And I think I'm being told, rather than go through the slide, I'm just going to wing it on Neptune. Neptune is divine union, and Neptune is divinely inspired creativity on the high side. Okay? So Neptune, when it is strong in your chart or in your energy, you just feel one with everything. Right now, Neptune is in the sign of Pisces, and that is the sign that it rules. If you use modern rulers in astrology, and there's a zillion ways to do astrology, but some astrologers believe Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Then it's in its home base. The energy of awakening and oneness and unity is very strong, and there's all this new creative energy. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we don't really have a mainstream culture anymore. We have hundreds of subdivisions now, because we have the internet and we can all dial into exactly that slice of creativity that we enjoy. But whatever slice you're tuned into, is there not a lot of amazing stuff happening in music and art and theater and movies? And I mean, it's just, are you noticing? I mean, last year's movies were really good, you know? So the creativity is blossoming, and in my experience, I used to be a singer-songwriter professionally. And my experience was, when I would sit down and open the pipeline, I could either get a new song out of it or I could get some meditative bliss. So the energy of Neptune can manifest either in a blatantly creative way or in a blatantly spiritual way. But those of you who are creative, when you're in that zone and you're in the midst of your creative process and time is not there anymore, is that not pretty much the same consciousness you hold when you're meditating? Is there really much difference? So you can get there either way. So that's kind of what Neptune in Pisces is saying. Now, there's also a dark side of Neptune in Pisces, which is true of any, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, there's a high side and a low side of all this. So whether you experience the high or low side depends on where you focus your attention. The low side of Pisces is, getting heavily into drugs or alcohol, escapist behaviors such as just spending an excessive amount of time, TV, sex, food, internet, games, just anything to zone me out from my worldly responsibilities. It can be the victim-martyr syndrome playing out, or it can be, I'm just space dude, I have no direction, I have no focus, I'm drifting. That's all dark Neptune, if you will. So if you are experiencing or tempted by any of that, if you place your attention on your spiritual awakening or your creative expression, you will discover the urges in the other direction will fall away. Because you're now taking Neptune, like I said, you're keeping it busy on the high side. It doesn't have energy left over for the low side. Okay, so that's the basic thing I wanted to cover that I've pretty much covered beyond all this. And of course, compassion and forgiveness naturally arise when you move into that awakened state. So I believe we've entered the Aquarian Golden Age already. Heaven on earth is now attainable. And like I said, a lot of people are doing it already. And it's literally as simple as an invocation. I do a thing every Tuesday night at my house, just a few blocks from here. And we come in and we do invocations together. I do a little shamanic work. And the core invocation we do is just you speak to your higher self and you say, maximum light and divine consciousness that serves highest good, please. And you close your eyes and you just breathe, and y'all can probably feel it coming in right now. It's available by request. How cool is that? You can literally move into that state of pure being, the awakened state, in just a few minutes by doing that. I'm not guaranteeing it's permanent. You may have to refresh it until it does lock in, but the veils get thinner every day. We're moving in that direction, and every day attaining that state gets easier and easier. The more, as more people wake up every day, the quantum field of awakening spreads and empowers, and it just gets easier and easier. So, I love it. All right, so in my earlier spiritual days, I read a lot of Daniel Quinn books. He wrote Ishmael, which some of you may have read at one point. But I still love his basic tenets that he teaches in those books, which is realize the story you're living in is not the only possible story. After waking up from your story, help in the ways that you're called to from within. Don't wait for a leader. We're moving beyond hierarchy. The common phrase now is we are the ones we've been waiting for, right? Your intuition is your guide, and your actions will be synchronously woven into the great web of the new story. if you follow your enthusiasms and your passions, then that means you are being guided by the higher intelligence, which is running the whole show, and you will be doing your perfect part in the great scheme. So if you want to know how can I serve, just ask what am I most enthusiastic about, and that's probably the answer. All right, so time for some technical talk. Before I move into the charts and the Grand Cross, are there any questions or comments from anyone about anything I've said so far? Yes?
The Neptune in Pisces, does that mean it would have a greater effect than someone who has, whose birth sign is Pisces?
It will when Neptune gets to that planet, yes. So she's asking if you have a planet, a important planet in Pisces, will Neptune affect that? Now, as soon as Neptune comes into Pisces, it sort of radiates its energy throughout the sign, but it's subtle. You know, most people wouldn't be aware of that. As an astrologer, what I've learned is that when the planet transiting gets within 5 degrees of its aspect, it starts to sort of warm the water up a little bit. When it gets within 3 degrees, we're pretty much at a boil. Okay? And so when the moving planet gets within 3 degrees of the exact aspect it's making, to 3 degrees beyond that little 6-degree window, that's when the real action happens from the moving planet. So I don't know if you know what degree your Neptunian planet, your Piscean planet is at.
I don't know,
Okay.
I was thinking of someone else.
Okay, well let's say it was at 10 degrees, okay? That means when transit Neptune goes up to 5, they start to feel a little bit. When it gets to 7 or beyond, they feel the Neptunian energy very strongly. And then during those 3 years, when Neptune will be between 7 and 13 in Pisces, they'll feel that energy really strongly. Now it'll go outside, but it'll come back in. Neptune is a 3-year transitor these days. Once it gets beyond 13 and moves away, they will not feel much effect because Neptune will have done its work. So just because you have a planet in the sign these guys are in doesn't mean you're really feeling it yet. It's really, they got to get within about 3 degrees to really turn the heat up big. Any other questions or comments about any of this before we go forward? Mariah?
Good evening, my friend.
Good evening.
I have 2 charts, a natal with transits and progressions, and just a natal.
Mm-hmm.
Which one would be better to look at?
You mean for tonight? Oh, you'll just give me the date and I'll plug it into my computer. I won't use your paper, I'll just put it on the screen. Okay, but that's for later. We do the individual examples after we go through the material.
Okay, and then my other question was, when you talk about Uranus originally, I was kind of getting settled, and so I missed this sort of quick overview. Uranus in what planet?
Aries.
Aries.
Yeah, just revolution, new beginnings, big new things happening is the key idea.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so today is April 9th. In 6 days we have a lunar eclipse. Now eclipses happen every 6 months, and there's either 2 or 3 of them. And so this eclipse is interesting because it's an asteroid goddess eclipse. How many of y'all know that in astrology we use asteroid goddesses like Juno, Pallas, Athena, and Vesta, and Ceres? Okay, well, I'll explain them to you. Okay, not all astrologers use this, but there are rarely 2 astrologers who ever do anything the same way. We're a very ornery and individualistic lot. So the eclipse is the sun around 25 Aries and the moon around 25 Libra. And wherever the moon is, of course, is where you put your attention. So the full moon of any kind, whether it's an eclipse or not, is about seeing clearly, because the full moon is the brightest time of the night, and you can see things most clearly. And it's a time of reflection and adjustment. And the full moon is more about release, the new moon is more about initiation. So as this full moon eclipse happens in Libra, the 2 main keywords that apply to most people for Libra are relationship and creativity. So this full moon eclipse will be a great time to think, okay, how am I doing my relationships? How am I expressing myself creatively? And Libra has a further, more subtle meaning of just harmony and balance. Its symbol is the scales. And the idea is to have those scales pretty well balanced. Okay? So those are great themes to be contemplating while this happens. You can tell it's a strong eclipse by how close the luminaries, the sun and moon, are to the nodes of the moon. And those are these horseshoes down here. See this little black horseshoe here and the other one flipped over here? So in this case, the north node of the moon is only about 3.5 degrees off of conjunction to the moon. and the south node is the same distance from the sun. So basically the strength of an eclipse for an astrologer's purposes is the closer they are together, the stronger the eclipse is. So since an eclipse can have the nodes up to 18 degrees away from the luminaries, to have them just 3.5 is really tight. So I expect this eclipse to be very strong. And you should feel the effects again in relationship and creativity primarily. So again, I feel a little scared. Oh, what's going to happen to my relationships? Oh God, is my creativity going to survive? So again, that's one way you can work with it. But you can also, okay, how do I choose to work with my relationships right now, since this full moon is giving me clarity on them? The great thing about eclipses, lunar eclipses especially like this, is you can see more clearly what's happening in the relational field. And then you have free will choice. What are you choosing to do? And in the same way, if your creative expression is not totally firing on all cylinders and you become aware of an issue creatively, what are you going to choose to do about that? Remember, your free will is always a part of the mix. I was just having this discussion with a client today about, free will versus human ego. And I do agree that, my primary orientation is just, I will be done. I surrender the best I can to my internal guidance. But at the same time, guess what? We're all God too. And a human being doing something is God creating. We are aspects of the divine, and we are all in the process of divine creation by what we do. So, the balance there perhaps is you do whatever you can to feel guided by the internal flow, and then if there's any gaps there where you don't quite have the internal guidance, then you figure it out the best you can from your mind. And it's a playback. You kind of go back and forth, okay, let me get as much input as I can, and then I'll have to fill in the gaps from the ego if that part didn't come through. As you continue the process, you'll find the divine comes more and more until eventually you can actually go fully on autopilot. And as they say in the oneness thing, there's doing but no doer. Things just happen. And usually it's not just a quick transition, usually it's a gradual phasing in and phasing out of the process. So that's the lunar eclipse, but I should probably talk about the asteroid goddess since I teased you with that information. What's really interesting about this one is the moon is conjunct Ceres and Vesta. The asteroid goddess Pallas Athena is making soft aspects to the luminaries, and then Juno is down here by the sun. So again, each asteroid goddess has a unique meaning, and to me, given how many there are, that would be overkill to talk about the individual meanings too deeply. But to me, what does it mean when we have 4 feminine planets involved in the eclipse? To me, it's receptivity, because that's the general vibe of the feminine planets. Now, Pallas Athena is an exception, but she's not conjunct the luminaries either. So I think as this eclipse on the 15th sort of really gets the ball rolling for the events of April, I think the general message of the asteroid goddesses is relax, be receptive to your own internal energy and guidance. To me, the setup is, okay, I just want to realize I don't have to figure this all out from my mind. I can invoke my own wisdom and flow and let myself be guided through these next intense days. Now again, I could go deeper, but I do want to leave time for our individual chart work, so I'm going to leave it at that, unless anyone has questions about this particular eclipse chart. Yes?
You said there were four asteroids?
4 asteroid goddesses, yes.
Juno, Ceres, Vesta, and
Pallas Athena.
Pallas Athena.
Yeah, is the 4th.
Where is she located?
She's over here in Leo, making sextile and trine. But again, the ones that are conjunct are the strongest, and the 3 that are actually conjunct the luminaries are the ones that have a more receptive quality to them.
Okay.
Yeah. Pallas Athena is the asteroid goddess who kicks butt and takes names. Okay, so next chart. Now, I'm going to be mixing 2 kinds of charts tonight, those that are just the sky in general and those that hit the United States chart, okay? Because we live here in the United States, and to those of you who are watching the video who don't, my apologies, I'm directing this to those who do. So the United States sun, and a technical note too, there are many competing charts for what is the real birth chart of the United States. As I said, astrologers rarely agree on anything. But the most commonly used chart is called the Sibley chart, and it has the United States birth as July 4th, 1776. I believe it's like 5:15 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Or like 5 or 5:15. 5:15 is my birth time, so I might be confusing it. Spirit Song, do you happen to remember the time on that one?
I don't.
Okay, but it's around there, around 5 p.m. Okay, and that's the chart I've used for the United States here. So what you're seeing here is a different kind of chart. You see there's planets on the inside as well as planets on the outside of the circle. So when we astrologers do that, it's usually the birth chart on the inside and then the moving planets around the outside. So the real headline in the United States right now is the United States sun at 13 degrees 19 minutes is just smack in the middle of this Grand Cross. Okay, huge. Okay, and in a country's chart, because everything has a chart, a country, a person, any event that begins has a birth chart. That's what's called electional astrology, right? This is another subject. But 13, that means that these moving planets are all lining up on the U.S. sun. The transiting Pluto is opposing it. Transiting Uranus is squaring it. Transiting Mars is squaring it. And transiting Jupiter is right on top. And those are the planets of the Grand Cross. The Pluto-Uranus square I talked about, as well as Mars and Jupiter filling out the square. So in the country's chart, the sun is like the identity of the country. Okay, what's the soul of the country about? And often a country's chart sun is its leader. So in our case, that would be President Obama at 13 degrees. Okay, so all the things I talked about, revolutionary change, huge power and dynamic tension and new opportunities, are all being expressed onto the U.S. sun. So now again, in astrology, there can be a temptation, let me tell you exactly what's going to happen now, but I don't know. Now there are what are called mundane astrologers, and that doesn't mean they're boring, it just means they deal with the mundane as opposed to the spiritual. Mundane astrology focuses on political events, country events, large-scale events that affect large numbers of population. And there are astrologers out there who are making all sorts of predictions about what's going to happen. Some are very hopeful, some are absolutely catastrophic. And my bottom line is I have no idea what's going to happen. All I know is we already know there's huge changes going on in the country. And we're not nearly done, because the U.S. sun is going to continue receiving these energies from Uranus and Pluto for a couple of years more, okay, even after this big Grand Cross hits. So what we can say is it's a time of very powerful change for the country, and whatever happens, whatever shape or form the country is in a couple of 3 years after all this washes out, it's not going to look the same. That much I can guarantee. Now, we individually don't have a lot of specific control over what happens with the country. In other words, I can't go be President Obama's advisor and tell him what to do, because I'm an astrologer. But what we can do, with the power we do have, is we can control our individual consciousness. And that is more powerful than you realize. If an awakened person attained awakening and sat alone in a room for the rest of their life and never interacted with another human being, they would still be of huge service, because their awakened consciousness would be radiating into the energetic sphere of the planet and making it that much easier for everyone else to wake up. In the same way, if you want to help the country weather this crisis in the best possible way, stay as awake as you can. Move into that state of consciousness that is the absolute peace. I already gave you the invocation if you want to use the way I do it. Just maximum light and divine consciousness that serves highest good, please. Say it, rest passively in your breath, and watch what happens. Okay? So your service can be just to stay as awake as you can. The more people that radiate peace and consciousness and high vibration, the more the whole country, the more the whole world is going to start doing that. That's how the global awakening will happen. Enough people will be awake and radiating that beautiful, peaceful energy, and a tipping point will get reached, and all of a sudden a wave of awakening washes over everybody else. And what happened? I was about to hit you, and I don't want to. I love you. It can be like that. So if you want to help the U.S. negotiate this the best way, first stay awake as you can. And if you are called to serve in some way that promotes peace and harmony, then do that too. But in my experience, harmony cannot be imposed from the outside. If you have a person who is conflicted inside themselves, is at war with themselves psychologically and emotionally, you can preach peace to them all day long, but until they have their own awakening and feel the peace inside themselves, their behavior will continue to be warlike. So to me, the work I am called to do is to help people attain the peace inside themselves. and then they will naturally, their behavior and energy will naturally come into harmony on the outside. An awake person does not want to cause harm. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. So, so this is one of many hits that are going to hit the U.S. sun. I didn't even say the specific transit, did I? Okay. Transit Uranus on April 17 is exactly square the U.S. sun, the planet of revolution and paradigm shift. Okay. Now I should note as well, yeah it is, but the big events don't usually happen when the outer planets come exact. Now I put this up because this happens to be the day it happens. But usually there's the trigger planets that take care of the timing. So let me, and if I lose you technically, I'm really trying hard to explain these concepts in plain English, but if anyone gets lost, just raise your hand and ask and I'll try to clarify. Because this is my natural language now and I have to translate effectively. So please let me know if I'm not doing that. So, let me see what I was talking about.
You mentioned trigger planets.
Triggers, thank you. I just went into the zone for a minute there. Okay, so the slow guys are Chiron and Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. And those are what we call the stage setters. In other words, these planets, Chiron through Pluto, when they come into contact with a natal planet, they're going to be there for 2 to 3 years, off and on, making contact energetically to that planet. And one of these big guys kind of really has to be there, in most cases, for a significant event to even happen. Now, they don't have to be on top. They can be making all sorts of oppositions or squares, and there's other aspects as well they can make. You know, there's a whole bunch of aspects you can use if you're an astrologer. But one of these guys kind of needs to be there, and then the quicker guys, the obvious ones are the Sun through Mars, which go around every year or two. But Jupiter is a great trigger planet. We'll be seeing him doing a trigger. Saturn kind of can play both sides of the street. When Saturn is kind of stopping and moving in another direction, it's called a station, he can be on top of a planet for like 8 months. So Saturn sometimes can act as a stage setter, but mostly he's a trigger. So, so what we have here is we have the U.S. Sun, all kinds of stage setters in place. We have Uranus and Pluto both, you know, spending 2 to 3 years lighting up the U.S. Sun. When the big events happen should be when the quicker guys come around and hit the Sun. So does that make sense between stage setters and trigger planets in astrology? Okay. And I'll mention, when I do individual counseling, most of the time I don't even talk about the trigger planets. Because to me it's more helpful to an individual to just have a sense, okay, in this 2 to 3 year period, these themes are going to be strong. And here's general advice on how to work with that theme, as opposed to getting all worried about, on this day it's exactly, that day it's like, oh shit, you know, all paranoia can get resonant and worry and fear. To me, I generally find a more large-scale canvas is better and just a general concept to work with. Although I also do something called a tight focus consultation for people who want the nitty-gritty day by day. I'm happy to do those too. Okay, so that's the T-square Jupiter, I'm sorry, Uranus square the U.S. Sun, and then we have Jupiter conjunct the Sun the very next day, April 18th. So let's just recap. Lunar eclipse on the 15th of April. On the 17th, Uranus squares the U.S. Sun. On the 18th, Jupiter conjuncts the U.S. Sun. These 8 days I'm showing you, I've never seen a concentration of events like we're seeing here. Okay, so on the 18th, Jupiter conjuncts the U.S. Sun. There's a trigger planet. He's exact. The day after Uranus squares it. So again, I don't know what's going to happen on the 18th, but I'd be amazed if there weren't some very big news on or around the 18th of April that relates to the United States. Now, Jupiter itself may carry some meanings. As you know, Jupiter in our solar system, he's the biggest planet out there, so he tends to have large effects. The effect he always has is expanding what's there. Okay? Now, whether that's good or ill, of course, depends on the consciousness of the entity being affected. Okay? So, what I can say is the U.S. will probably be very prominent at that time. Something large-scale will probably happen, and it could be something wonderful. Maybe the ETs will come down and we'll get to say hi, for, you know, publicly and for real, you know. I just don't know. But that is a time when the energy around the U.S. chart is just at an incredible peak right on the 18th. Any questions or comments about that? Maybe they'll visit Bill Clinton first. Yeah, maybe they have.
Benjamin?
Yes.
I heard that NASA and some of those people that are tracking things have been getting their full radar screen filled up with these huge ships, and they don't know what they are, that they're covering the whole radar screen because
Wow.
they're like miles across.
Woo!
And they're scratching their heads because they don't really know what's up.
Well, if you're right and the radar screens are getting filled with unidentified flying objects, then maybe they're going to come when Jupiter hits the sun.
So I'm hoping,
That'd be great.
so I'm hoping this.
What was the sign in Close Encounters? Stop and be friendly.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, 2 days later, on April 20th, T-square, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto. In astrology, we have things called aspect patterns. The Grand Cross is one of them. That's just 3 or more planets that make some sort of geometrical setup. And on the 20th, the 3 most important planets in this whole thing are here. We've got Pluto and Uranus and Jupiter lining up exactly, and they are within 4 minutes of exactitude, and there are 60 minutes in a degree. So they are exact by 1/15 of 1 degree. I mean, it is almost unheard of in astrology for 3 slow planets to line up that exactly. I've never seen that before, is what I can say. Within 1/15 of 1 degree. That's really powerful. That's Uranus-Pluto, the revolutionary change guys. And here's Jupiter, whose job is make it bigger. You get a sense of the flavor, right? Now we can take now, the further away a planet is in terms of your personal experience, the less the sign matters. I've told you the general flavor of Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Aries. But Jupiter in Cancer, because it only spends a year in a sign, is a little more personal. And Cancer is the energy of family and nurturing and security. So one effect that may be generally happening around this with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is family matters. Okay? How many of you are experiencing any kind of upheaval in your family life right now? Okay? Yeah, well, there's quite a bit going around right now. So basically Uranus and Pluto are saying if you don't already have a nice harmonious foundation, let's, give you a trigger and let something flare up so you can see what it is and heal it. And while I'm mentioning that, I should probably give you my healing invocation. The core invocation was 10 words. This is just 7. It's even easier to remember. You just speak to your inner wisdom and you say, maximum healing that serves highest good please. And use it especially when you just got upset by something. And what will happen then if you just passively breathe is a fountain of divine light will come down and wash over you, and it will literally just rinse away that energy that just got over. But you have to stay totally passive and not try to help. If you want more information on my invocations, you can go to astroshaman.com, my site. You have the card. And on the top of the homepage sidebar, there's a little banner. It's purple. It says Heal and Awaken Invocations. Click that. It'll take you to a section of the site that's all about this process I've been referring to. It's a free area. There's MP3s of me leading it that are free. You can download or stream. So feel free to take advantage of that if this technique intrigues you. All right, so what can happen with the Jupiter in Cancer family thing is, again, unstable situations get stimulated. You then have a choice of how to work with it. Okay? And again, I recommend if conflictual situations are arising, step 1, stay awake. Be as awake as you can. The core invocation I gave you calls in peace and centeredness. And when you operate from that state in a dysfunctional situation, it doesn't feed the conflict. When you throw, zingy energy back at someone who's zinging you, it just fans the flames. The more you can maintain your peace and center, the more calm prevails in the situation. All right, yes?
Before you change them, you covered 3 tips of the cross. What about the 4th one?
There is no 4th tip at the moment. Okay.
Looks like there are a bunch of little planets down there.
Oh, down here?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I will get to Mars in a couple of slides, because then the Grand Cross tightens on the 22nd. We're still 2 days out. But I promise I will bring him in a moment.
Okay.
But that's a good catch. You can see there are red lines connecting, so that was a good call. But he's going to be even more exact in a couple days, so we'll talk about him then. Good catch. Okay, and then the Uranus-Pluto T-square comes exact on the 21st. So how many events has that been since the 15th? 5 or 6?
4.
Wow. Okay. So This is, again, so the Uranus-Pluto T-square that I told you was happening 2012 to 2015 comes exact 7 times. Okay? Because these, you know, in astrology you watch planets from our Earth's perspective. They go forward most of the time, then they back up, and they go forward again. And these guys are both back and forward here, and so they're going to cross paths a number of times as they wobble back and forth in the sky. So this is the 5th of 7 exact hits on the 21st. And again, this I'm not too concerned about, because as I told you, when slower planets line up exactly, it's not that big a deal. It's when the trigger planets come around and zing them that you get the effects usually. Because I've been watching these exact Uranus-Pluto squares and watching the news on those days, and usually there's nothing big happening. Okay? But when triggers are involved, it's a different matter. Okay, and then on the 22nd, our headline event, here it is, the Grand Cross itself. Okay, so on April 22nd, which is 13 days away, we have the tightest Grand Cross I've ever seen in the sky. Okay, Mars comes into its closest control position, and now we have Pluto, Uranus, Jupiter, and Mars making this incredible square in the sky, and the 4 of them are exact within 1/3 of 1 degree. That's tight. Okay, so this is that peak moment I've been talking about in my newsletter so much lately. This is the strongest moment of the entire Uranus-Pluto square. This kind of power is not going to happen again. So the question is, what are you going to do with it? So, you know, how many of you all are thinking, I think I'll just crawl under my bed for a while and hope nothing happens? How many of you are thinking I'm going to strap a rocket pack to my back and fly? Yeah, that's what I'm doing, okay? So these are very intense energies, but what this means is this is initiation power, okay? All of these planets are in cardinal signs. I should give you a tiny bit of information about modes, okay? In astrology, there are 3 modes: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. The cardinal signs, which are involved here, they're Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, are the energy of initiation, getting it started. There's also signs that are called fixed. There's 4 of those. In fact, you can even tell on this, let me see if this is true. No, these are coded by element, not by mode. But the fixed ones, there's 4 of those, are about keeping it steady, staying the course, taking it to the finish line. And then the mutable energies are about adaptability and change and letting it go when you're done with it. The fact that it's happening in cardinal signs means this is good energy to start things with. Okay? So if I were me, and I knew that we had the world's most powerful kickstart in memory happening on April 22nd, I think, what can I start? What can I initiate here? Or what's already underway that I can give a fresh kick to? So my recommendation is use this to kick something off. You know, what are you most excited to do more of or get rolling? So that's my simple answer to what to do with all this. Okay? And because the energies are going to be so intense, oh my God, do you think they're strong now? Wait till this. Keep your center. It's so important to stay in your peace. And remember, it's just an invocation away. Now, I'm obviously talking about my system because it's what I'm here to share, but if you've got something that works better, use it. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you get there. You know, whatever system's getting you to your peace, then use it a lot. And it's very important to stay in your center around these days, the second half of April, because the energies are very intense and you can get triggered real easy. You know, I'm usually pretty good at my center, but I've been majorly triggered twice this last week. And like I said, that's very rare for me. So I know it's hitting me that hard, it must be hitting a lot of other people even stronger. So the inner peace is there. When you're totally in your center, nothing bothers you. So really maintain that the best you can. Okay, so any questions about the big kahuna itself before we move forward?
I mean, so you've shown us a number of events all within a few days.
Right.
I'm just wondering how long this really intense effect will keep going. I know it will probably be gradual.
In other words,
diminishment, but
how long will this be going on? All right, the answer is through the end of May. Okay, this Grand Cross energy will, now Mars will step out pretty quickly after just a few days. but the actual T-square that is the heart of the Grand Cross, Uranus, Pluto, and Jupiter, actually kicked up in January and will last through May. It's a 5-month. So by the time we get to the end of May, it should be calming down a little bit. Now I'm going to give you a little sneak peek at Beyond Spring, a few key events for the rest of the year too, as long as you're here. And there will be a reiteration of this T-square, but it's not going to be nearly as strong as this. It'll be like just an echo of it, as opposed to a real strong repeat. So through the end of May, and by the time we get to, and again, there's waxing and waning. Right now this is waxing. It's getting tighter and closer and more intense. The climax is the 22nd, and then it will slowly start to fade out through the end of May, is the basic way it will feel. Okay, so there is an end to it. Spirit song, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Obama's recent focus on making sure that women are paid as well as men. You know, I mean, he just made a big deal about this, that
Right.
It's been going on so long and it needs to change. So much fits with the energy that's going on with Jupiter and Cancer, and well, you know, we've already been feeling it, and it's already happening. It just intensifies and peaks at those times. But I really thought, you know, that's pretty radical. He is saying no more. He's going to do what it takes, whether he has cooperation or not.
Yeah, he did that as an executive order, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't wait for the Congress to shut him down. Yeah, Obama, you know, the whole Uranus-Pluto square thing is so perfect around what Obama's facing in the Congress, because, you know, he would probably be more on the side of Uranus and Aries. I'm here to bring change. That was his whole slogan when he campaigned, right? And new beginnings, Aries. And the Republicans in Congress are a little more like Pluto and Capricorn. Now, Pluto can be the teardown agent of change, but Pluto can also be the plutocrat. Where'd the word come from, right? The one who's, I've got the big money, I've got the big power, I'm just going to keep things as they are and squash you if you try to challenge me, right? More of a Darth Vader approach. So that's a little more Republican, but yet it's not even that simple, because the Tea Party would be more Uranus and Aries. There are radical new force rising up, you know, with something new and unusual, even though it's very conservative. So, you know, you got chocolate on my peanut butter, you got peanut butter on my chocolate. Mariah, you had a question?
I had a comment too. I think what's going to happen is the cabal is going to be exposed.
You mean the dark forces behind the scenes?
Yes, in a big way, because they've gotten arrogant and power, you know, with power, and I think they don't think people are paying attention. And I think something's going to happen to cause everybody to pay attention and to know what's been going on with these machinations and manipulations behind the scenes. I got an email today that quoted Obama directly about something to do with what he burned a flag back in the day when he was a young guy.
Right.
And so they quoted him directly, and they said, don't change this email, just pass it along, and don't make any comments. And I'm like, what? So I read through the email, and I'm reading his comments, and I'm like, did you read the email? It's all about peace and end of war and end of, you know, conflict, and the intention to drop our weapons forever across the globe, and they're worried about the flag.
Well,
And I'm thinking, well, isn't that interesting? Because everybody's going to have their own filter
right.
about words that were taken out of context or not fully read and understood, you know, where someone's come from. So my curiosity is, how is this impacting Obama directly? Have you looked at that chart?
I have not. I've done his chart, but I have not looked at his chart. Maybe that's the first one we should look at after we finish the big presentation, just real quickly, since he's up here. Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah, there's nothing that one side can't try to spin to, and since we're now, you know, I mentioned, you know, how there's no mass culture really, it's just everyone's in their individual little niche of what they like, and that's become true of the news too. I mean, the viewers of Fox News are very different than those who watch CNN, you know, or MSNBC.
Is that blue triangle significant?
No, it's not there. I will be talking about a blue triangle later though. Before you, she had her hand up.
You said this energy started in January. Was it the beginning or the end of January?
Well, actually, now that I think about it, it was actually late December when it depends on the orbs you use, when you consider that a planet got close enough to start to light up. So it was roughly, around Christmas time when the T-square started. I mean, it was very weak when it started, but it started slowly phasing in. These things happen gradually and then they fade out again. You had a question?
What relationship do you see between this whole setup and the red moon prophecy?
Well, if I knew what the red moon prophecy was, I could probably answer that better.
Okay.
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. Well, I could only explain it partially because I don't know a whole lot about it. But since it's a phenomenon where the moon becomes almost red in color on the full moon, and see, it's supposed to have, also called the red moon tetrad.
Okay.
I think there's supposed to be 4 red moons in a row, but I'm not completely clear on that.
Okay.
This phenomenon has only occurred 3 times since the time of Christ, and it's about to happen in April.
Huh.
And every time it's happened, there's been a major change in the Israeli people, in the Jewish people's history,
Huh.
or in Israel. So it happened in 1948 when the formation of Israel happened,
Mm-hmm.
and in the 1967 war when they reacquired Jerusalem.
Sounds like it's good for Israel then.
Well, I don't know, they're just major things, and in every case, it had a big impact on the whole world.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
I
obviously.
may be a little off on some of those details.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not going to be able to comment on that because this is the first I've heard of it. So I apologize that I'm too ignorant to talk about that.
Yes, you're just looking up the astrology of the nation of Israel.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, but again, that would be fascinating, and my own focus tends to be more on individual charts. But thank you for bringing that up, and I may just check that out a little more
Yeah,
later.
check it out.
Okay,
It's
thank
Red
you.
Moon Prophecy or Red Moon Tetrad.
Nice. Yeah, what the general comment I will make about that, I believe that since divine order permeates all things, there are an infinite number of ways to do prophecy. Because if you're sensitive enough, prophecy is everywhere. And red moons or runes or whatever mark the lineup of the planets in the skies and the form of prophecy in a way. So, they're so beautiful. There's so many ways that we can use to gain insight, from the external world. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else before we move to the next slide? And start our denouement. All right. Then the U.S. gets another hit, and here's our fastest trigger planet. Now Mars is square the U.S. Sun. As you'll recall, it wasn't just but a few days ago that Uranus squared it, and Jupiter conjuncted it, and now Mars is square. So more evidence to me that there may be really powerful shifts somehow affecting the U.S. Between the 18th and 24th of April. And again, I don't make concrete predictions anymore. I used to take a stab at things, but it's just beyond. I've learned not to speak beyond my knowledge level. And so my job as an astrologer is to say, here's the raw material, what do you want to do with it? And then it's up to the individual how they choose to shape the material. And in this case, it's up to us collectively as United States citizens and government officials. All right? So then we're finally past April. So just to review, just to gain perspective on this. So here's the events as they go. April 15th, we have the full moon lunar eclipse. 17th, Uranus squares the U.S. Sun. The 18th, Jupiter conjuncts the U.S. Sun. The 20th, the T-square peaks in the sky with Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto. The 21st, the Uranus-Pluto square comes exact. The 22nd, the Grand Cross peaks. And then just for bonus, on the 24th, Mars squares the U.S. Sun. So, I kid you not, in all my years as an astrologer, I've never seen a series of events that potent, not only just in the sky, but having such a massive impact on the United States chart. So, again, my general advice is don't give in to fear. What do they say? Fear is the mind killer, right? So keep your center, keep calling in your peace. You can create your own, bliss zone around you by keeping your own internal calm. And the more you stay calm, the more you serve everyone else by radiating calm that everyone else can pick up on. Okay, so now there's a few other things happening in the rest of the spring. That happens, the spring doesn't get over till June 20th. And on the May 15th, Uranus opposes the US Saturn. Okay? And why would Saturn be an important planet in the US chart? Well, Saturn rules all structures. That's the nature of Saturn. Remember when I talked about Capricorn that Pluto was in? In astrology, we have 3 ways to get to the same archetypal energy. We can use a planet, a sign, or a house. And in this case, the things I said about Capricorn are also identical to Saturn. It's structure, it's your foundation. Low side Saturn impulses can be, I want to control you and make up the rules myself and throw them on you. High side Saturn qualities, and also on the dark side, Saturn can be cold and impersonal and say the ends justify the means. Okay? But the high side Saturn is mature, responsible, disciplined. It plans the work and works the plan and gets a lot done. So, Saturn's really strong in my chart, and I love my Saturn. He helps me a lot. So again, in old style astrology, Saturn is the great malefic, the bad guy. But, most modern astrologers don't use that thinking anymore. Say it's just a neutral planet. It can go high or low, and which way it goes depends on how you work with it. So, but what I do think will continue happening here in May is Uranus, who brings revolution and sudden change, is opposing the key structures of the United States. And thus we may see some more shifting around and big changes, either physically or conceptually, in the U.S. here in mid-May. Then on May 17th, 2 days later, oh God, do we have another trend starting? Pluto opposes the U.S. Sun. And that's a huge transit, because Pluto, again, is the most powerful planet I work with. It's weird, in astrology, the further away a planet is, the stronger it gets when it transits. And that's mainly because they take so long, and all the outer planets represent such potent transpersonal forces. It's like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. These are divine forces. These are transpersonal. They are things that are not easily embodied by a human ego, right? So Pluto opposes the Sun. He's saying, let's tear down what's not working and let's empower what does. And bring the change, is what Pluto basically says. And then someone asked about the triangle, and I'd like to address that now. We have a grand trine as well. Now this is a very different kind of aspect pattern. It's a big equilateral triangle, and we got some different players here. We have Chiron, Jupiter, and Saturn, all relatively slow planets in terms of astrology. So let's think about what this means. Chiron is the wounded healer, and on the high side it brings healing and mentoring. And then Jupiter, as we already know, is the expander. It makes whatever it is bigger. And here's Saturn, which is our structures. Okay? So the nature of a grand trine is it tends to create balance and harmony. It's a perfectly balanced structure. Okay? And trines are known for harmony, ease, and flow. So a grand trine makes these things come together easily. So if you want to create a healing structure and expand it, this grand trine is awesome for doing that. And it comes into strength for several weeks and fades out. I think this one lasts 2 months, so probably a month coming in and a month going out roughly. So the grand trine is really strong. So if you want to create a healing structure, and especially if you want to give it to the world, because Saturn and Jupiter are in the class of planets known as the social planets. In astrology we have little divisions. The Sun through Mars is personal planets. You feel them really directly in your own ego. Saturn and Jupiter, they're social planets. They affect the society you live in. And then Uranus, Pluto, Neptune are those huge transpersonal forces way out there I was talking about. So Saturn and Jupiter together are the collective we live in our society, and then there's healing, which can easily transmit to them.
So it's like it's what comes in after the upheaval of the Grand Crossing.
Yeah, we may need some healing after all that. And isn't it nice that the universe steps up with it the very next month? Yes?
I heard that there was a water trine during the time of the Grand Cross?
Uh-huh.
That
This
connects
is it.
with Jupiter?
This is it.
Jupiter? That's it?
Yeah, they're in water signs.
Okay, but I thought it came earlier than May.
Well, again, this is its peak moment,
Okay.
right? If we go back to those early charts, let's just see what happens. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, I'm sorry. So let's go back to here, like the Uranus-Pluto square time. Let's see if we can find them. Here's Saturn, Trine and Chiron. We haven't quite got Jupiter yet. Jupiter's not yet. And again, it depends on your orb. Different astrologers use different numbers of degrees for when this will connect with that. If we used a
10.
no, that would need to be an 8-degree orb, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I used 8 degrees, that grand trine already exists. Then I'd have a blue line there. And people who do mundane astrology tend to use bigger orbs than astrologers who are used to working with personal charts. So if I called it an 8-degree orb, I would have a grand trine there. So that is most likely what they're talking about, because I don't see any other grand trines that would be in position at that point. And I use quite a few objects in the chart. So I believe that is what they're talking about. However, I would have to say that it would be a fairly weak grand trine at that point, because Saturn and Jupiter are so far apart. So technically, yes, it could be with an 8-degree orb, but the grand trine hasn't really come into its power yet at that point. Does that help your question? Okay. Yeah. So the peak is on the 21st. So knowing this is about a month coming in, about a month going out, so you can, ride these energies, and you can do shamanic astrology. If you, now that I'm explaining to you the sense of how these planets function, you can say, hey, Chiron, come on in and let's do some healing work. Saturate me with healing energy. Heal me so that I may help heal others. And if you speak to the planet, it'll hear you. These are, that's like these guys are always listening. They're part of you in your astrology chart. And you speak to them and ask for a shift of energy, it will actually bring it to you. And just as in my invocations, the best way to receive it is just to relax and breathe and let the energy come in. That's my recommendation anyway. Again, that shamanic astrology chapter I wrote in that book, Transpersonal Astrology, Explorations of the Frontier, puts everything I know about shamanic astrology into one chapter. And if that intrigues you, you might want to pick the book up. You can link to it from my website under the products pull down. And buy it from Amazon. Why not? Okay, so that to me is the gist of the Grand Trine. Any questions about that? Yeah, yes, Mariah.
What is the significance of it happening in water? Is it just that it's softer, or is it?
Well, the nice thing about water signs is they're the most intuitive signs. I mean, of course, we have 4 elements in astrology: fire, earth, air, and water. Water is most associated with just, flow and ease and natural automatic process. So I think what they're saying here is you can really get the maximum benefit of the healing if you ask it to flow through you like water, would be my way of putting it.
Like go within.
Yeah, because guess what? The healing doesn't come from your ego, folks.
Yeah.
Any healing you do from that level is going to be very limited. If you say, Spirit, flow through me to be the healing power, now you got some healing going on. Yes?
I've heard that the water signs tend to be more emotional.
Yes.
So could it maybe be healing in the emotional realm?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very, very likely. Yeah. So I'm tempted to say, in a sense, all healing is emotional healing. I don't know where that came from. I guess that's what my intuition wanted to say. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. And then the last day of spring. We just got it under the wire. The T-square returns, and this time it's Jupiter's not in the picture, but now it's Mars, Uranus, and Pluto. So a little weaker. Mars doesn't have near the power of Jupiter. But even though it's the peaking, this is as close as it gets, we have one planet at, what is that, 1239, and the other one at 1605. So they're about 3.5 degrees apart, Uranus. You can see I have my program set up to show the exact aspects with thicker lines and the not so exact ones with thinner lines. So we are going to have another little intensity moment on June 19th, the day before summer. But again, this is not going to be a fraction as strong as the Grand Cross was. So this is not anything to hide under the bed about. This is just, but it is another kickstart. Okay, it's not quite the turbo boost we had in April, but you can use the energy on June 19 to once again give some new push behind whatever initiatives or kickoffs you want to do. So any questions on any of that? Oh, one thing I will say is these three planets in particular tend to be extremely volatile in combination, kind of like nitroglycerin, right? We got Pluto, Uranus, which you know about, and Mars on the challenge side can be aggression, violence, you know, Mars rules, you know, things that can do damage, all right? So under this energy, those who are more volatile will be more likely to get triggered. So I will also give you a caution, the days around June 19, I would try to avoid places where volatile people might tend to be and avoid provoking people who might be triggered.
That's the day you stay in bed.
Yeah, so now that is a way, again, since these are hard aspects, I bet we'll see some of that. Again, I said with all the violence in the news that has just sadly become commonplace, you know, there will probably be a little bit more of that going on around this time. But how can we use it on the high side? Let's see if anyone has any ideas. How could we take Uranus, Pluto, Mars and do something good with it? Any ideas?
I mean, you still have that with the Grand Cross though too, so we avoid volatile people on April 22nd also.
Yeah, yeah. I would.
Could be major breakthroughs, couldn't it? Because isn't Mars like a pioneer planet?
Yes.
So couldn't it be like these major moments of wow?
Major breakthrough?
Could it be?
It absolutely could. That's a great way of thinking about it. And whenever I see Uranus and Mars especially, you know, to me I always say, okay, now Uranus is the guy who sends down intuitive flashes. You know, I just know, okay? And when I discuss intuitive flash, I bet everyone here has had them, right? You probably wouldn't be here if you didn't, okay? But to me, the way I explain what's the difference between another thought and an intuitive flash is when the intuitive flash comes, you just know with absolute certainty that that idea that just came or that instruction you just received is authentic. It's the real deal. And in that case, you just ideally act on it. And that's how you use Uranus and Mars. Uranus pops the intuitive flash over and Mars acts on it. So that's my favorite way to use Uranus-Mars setups. Instead of having an accident, you just get an intuitive flash and you run with it and act on it. And then Pluto just says, and this intuitive flash might do something transformational or empowering for you. So that's how to harness the energy in a good way.
So Mars-Pluto is like really intense, so it almost feels like that Uranus is the trigger planet in this case instead of Mars.
Well, good point. Now, when I look at multi-planet setups, the usual way we think about them is the slower planet having an impact on the quicker planet. And Mars is the quick guy of the bunch. So, you know, I really don't think Mars' energy has much effect on Uranus and Pluto, typically speaking. You want to think the other way around. So yeah, we think of Uranus moving to Mars, the intuitive flash coming, and then the human taking action. So that is exactly the right way. I hope that's in fact what you said.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, my intuition is telling me pass the basket. So this is a love offering event, and if you feel like you're getting some benefit, you're welcome to put some money in the thing and then pass it around to the next person. Feel free to get up if you need to. And it is optional, but if you feel so inspired, then that would be a wonderful thing. All right, so any other questions about the T-square with Mars, Uranus, and Pluto? All right, moving on. Now we're actually into the fall now. Let me take a look. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 events that are beyond spring. And my intuition just told me what to do. It says you're almost at 8:30 and you want to do people's charts, so only talk about it if it's really, really important. So, look quick. I will mention on October 8th, there will be another very powerful lunar eclipse. And this one's going to be strong because the luminaries are only about less than 4.5 degrees off the nodes themselves, and because it lines up with Uranus and Pluto. In this October 8th eclipse, Uranus is not even 1 degree off the moon. That's really tight. And Pluto is down here squaring the sun and squaring the moon as well. So that one's going to be pretty intense. So it's a great time to do some good letting go and seeing what lighting up what's actually happening. The moon at this point is in Aries, so it'll be nice. Did this thing go all the way around? The whole room? Okay, good, thank you. All right. So, so again, this is a time when you'll want to think in terms of Aries, how are things looking in terms of my sexuality, how I'm being assertive, how I'm being a pioneer, a warrior, a force for initiation, an inventor. So think in terms of Aries themes on this full moon on the 8th. It's also a lunar eclipse. And we have Uranus square the U.S. Sun again on November 8th. I've already discussed how that works. By the way, when the slow guys, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, come on, it's something, they almost always hit it 3 times before they move on. They hit it the first time, they retrograde back, hit it again, and then they move forward and give it one last shot on the way out. With it, 11/11 is a fun word, okay? There is a, now this I had to stretch because I had to use the moon as one of the parts of an aspect pattern. But this was so amazing because I had a Pluto-Mars conjunction here on November 11th with these guys, Pluto and Mars, squaring Uranus, and then the moon came along and formed a quick little T-square. Now you want to talk a quick T-square, this one lasts maybe 8 hours. The moon moves very quickly. But we do have this moment on 11/11 with Pluto and Mars at 11 and 11. I just couldn't resist it to put that one up too. So that's another of those intense volatile times when stay away from the unstable people, but follow your intuitive flashes and act on them right away. Same kind of interpretation we had when Pluto, Uranus, and Mars were T-squaring each other. Okay? And then our finale on December 15 will have the number 6 of 7 Pluto-Uranus square exactly. Okay? So getting near the end of its run. No trigger planets on it at the moment. So again, I'm not expecting a huge event to happen on December 15, but just noting that that multi-year Uranus-Pluto square thing is get closer to its conclusion in early 2015. So any questions on the slideshow or anything I've said during this time? All right. So who wants to do their chart? Me. Okay, how do I choose? Oh my God. Okay, the boldest will win. Speak.
Me!
You, okay. So, now again, I would ask if you know that your chart is hit by the Grand Cross, then...
I'm going to be affected by the Grand Cross.
Okay, several of you will get to go, and the critical thing is not that your chart gets picked, but that we all learn the principles that are involved here. Okay? So, and I know your name, but I forgot.
It's Lynn.
Lynn, L-Y-N-N.
N-N-E.
N-N-E, see? I just have to admit that I have virtually no name recall anymore. Spirit has pretty much wiped my short-term memory in favor of on-the-moment intuitive guidance. So your date of birth?
October 22nd, 1955,
And do you know what time you're born?
1:30 p.m.,
And the city of birth was?
Midland, Michigan.
Midland?
M-I-D-L-A-N-D.
I was thinking Midland, Texas.
There's a lot of Midlands.
Yeah, they're probably all about in the middle too. Okay. Okay, so let's pull up Lynn's transit chart. What I just did used to take a couple of hours before we did. I love that. All right, and I'm also seeing that I have to restart my program to get it full size. So I may have to, no, I'll pull you up again here. No. So fortunately, rebooting this software is very quick. And all I have to do is go down here and, oh, I had it and I moved past it. So look how fast Solar Fire boots up. If any of y'all like this program, I'm a dealer for it. Okay, I'm going to search for Lynn. And there she is. And there she is. So let's see if we can get you full size. Yay! Okay.
What in the world?
So let's see if she's getting hit. Moon at 15 Capricorn, yes. Aries is clear, Cancer is clear. Mercury at 13. So she's got two important personal planets in the line of fire of the Grand Cross. So what I do in these cases is we have to understand the natal planet first. We all already know what the Grand Cross represents, huge revolutionary change and kickstart energy. So we already know Pluto's on our moon. We know that Mars is on our Mercury, and Jupiter and Uranus are also influencing. So to understand your chart better, we're going to go back to the natal chart. And in order to understand the effect, we have to go into the natal planets. So in your case, Mercury doesn't rule any angles. So the moon is the clear winner of the importance contest. It's the moon, a luminary. All things being equal, the sun or moon is going to be the most important planet being hit in a chart. And the fact that the moon rules her 7th house, which is the house of important relationships, is also a factor of importance. So I always interpret in layers. We start with the moon and it's what it would mean for anybody. It means your emotions, first and foremost. So if now the moon is a couple of degrees past the Grand Cross coordinates, but because of the orb thing I talked about, she's already been feeling this. Am I correct that in the last year there's been a lot more emotional turbulence than usual? A lot of stuff coming up for clearing? Yeah, okay, yeah. With Pluto on the moon, I would think so. Another Pluto's keywords is the psychologist. The psychologist is coming to visit and flush your inner stuff. All right, so that will continue probably for a good 2 more years with Pluto conjunct the moon. For, let me see, actually almost 3 years, because Pluto has not actually made the contact yet. Uranus will be squaring your moon from down here for a couple of years. So you've got a couple of years of emotional flush. And do you know why this is such great news?
Because I'm going to be awakened
Yes!
in 2 years.
Well, you could be awake today if you want. But
Why wait?
okay, but here's what happens. This is going to be strong clearing of the old psychological and emotional baggage, whatever you picked up in your childhood or whatever, stuff you brought in from a past life, stuff you're clearing for your family line, however you're working it, all right?
Huge stuff with my family line, just like clearing the lineage.
Good.
Just all the stuff from the past. Yeah.
Beautiful, okay. So I should mention, there's only one of us here. There is only God as a single consciousness entertaining itself by pretending to be separate beings, okay? So some of us who are good at clearing are called to clear for others. And Lynn apparently is being called to clear for her family. So I would, if you have a better modality that I'm about to give you, then use it, but I've already given the healing modality, the healing invocation. Maximum clearing that serves highest good, please. Rest passively in breath, let the energy flush it off every time it gets triggered. And now you've done the healing invocation in my Tuesday night group, right? And is it not true that after you finish the process, you feel actually more light and clear and wonderful than when you started it?
Absolutely.
Every time, right?
Yeah.
No layer's gone.
Oh, yeah.
And here's my metaphor. I recently came up with a hot air balloon metaphor, okay? So we're all of us hot air balloons wanting to soar all the way up into the sky, and that's your metaphor for awakening, okay? The problem is we've got all these sandbags roped to our gondola. They're keeping us too close to the earth. So how do we get rid of the sandbags, okay? Now we can proactively clear them, although most people don't, okay? So the way it usually happens is, you know, the divine intelligence says, okay, I need you to clear this one piece of stuff in here, and I know if I trigger you just like so, it'll come up. And there's your opportunity. So every time you get triggered, another of those things locked away, I've already talked about this, so I'll just synopsize, comes up and comes to the surface. It's at its most vulnerable, it's easiest to clear. You call the healing invocation, the energy flushes down and clears it away. So repeat as needed. The moon, of course, is the representative of family. And you said you have a lot of family stuff coming up. It can be specifically the mom. Okay.
Oh, right now. Today, yeah, my stepdad passed and my mom is in not good shape. He's been taking care of her, and the family's already been going through stuff because my sister passed and they took care of her stuff.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm having to make a decision as to whether or not I need to go and take care of my mother.
Wow, big decision.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, your moon fortunately is in the 12th house, the house of divine union and inner knowing. So if you just ask within yourself, Spirit, what's the best decision here? I think.
For my heart, it says go.
Yeah, heart is the same thing.
Go.
Yeah. Well, then you go. Yeah. Heart and intuition are usually the same thing for most
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah.
The thing is, the heart is where you're feeling it, and your head is where you're thinking about it, and your thoughts will just run you endlessly in circles like a hamster on a wheel, right?
Yeah.
But if you just go with the feeling, when I imagine this, what's the feeling? In fact, on my website, I have an article called The Feeling Test. You can just, on anything I mention on my site, if you just type it in the search box, it'll come up, okay? And it's where you just hold a scenario, say, Spirit, show me through my feelings what my best choice is. And you imagine a scenario and you ignore the thoughts about it and say, what's the feeling of it? And you write down the adjectives, you do the next scenario, and you compare your list of adjectives when you're done, and often that will show you what your best choice is.
And you just mentioned something earlier about me being chosen to clear family energy.
Uh-huh, right.
What do you mean by
Well, you
that?
said that a whole bunch of family stuff was coming up for clearing,
Right.
right? So when we clear something in ourselves, we clear it backwards in time through the whole lineage.
Is it that I'm more likely to do that based on that position? Or that that's just...
I can't, again, that would be a specific concrete prediction on my part, and I don't make those. But it's certainly possible. And based on what you said, it sounds like you're doing it already.
Because that's what I feel like I've been doing for a while.
Yeah.
Is clearing energy for them and for others.
Right. So you are clearly a good clearer, or you wouldn't have been called on to help other folks, or what appear to be other folks, and it's really just you in disguise. It's them masquerading as separate beings.
Yeah.
Okay, now the fact that it's in your 12th house, the house of divine union, means that this is a real potent awakening opportunity too. Because, Uranus wants it now, Pluto creates the revolution and transformation, and so this energies that will be hitting you for the next 3 years here are going to be constantly asking you to clear out the stuff. And I lost my metaphor, so let me come back. I talked about the hot air balloon with the sandbags. Well, every time your stuff comes up and Spirit washes it away, another sandbag gets cut away, and the balloon goes a little bit higher. Now, awakening can happen at any moment. My general perception is that when enough of those sandbags get cut away, you do soar up into the sky and you hit the permanent awakening. But until then, you can call it in. It's always available, for as long as it lasts, and you just refresh it when it fades. Is my recommendation until then. Okay.
Well, thanks, Benjamin.
And I want to say also, one last level, since you have the sign of Cancer on the cusp of the 7th house of relationships, then this is your relationship ruler. So I would expect in the last year or so, you've released a lot of people out of your life, haven't you?
Tons.
Tons. Okay. So
That's sort of my motto, is to let go of what and who no longer serves me.
right.
Not deliberately as they're bad people, it's just that I need to move into my, place of sovereignty and power
Right.
and what.
I get it. Or if in doubt, throw it out.
Yeah.
That's a little harsh. I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
the idea
it's
is.
not a harsh thing, it's just,
Yeah.
you just know that doesn't belong to you anymore, and you
Yeah.
have to keep moving.
Yeah, so what she's describing is you're in an awakening cycle. You're becoming more conscious of what you are,
Right.
and the people you used to resonate with who were at your former level are still down there.
Right.
And when you start waking up, you don't really want to spend a lot of time with people who are less awake. You want to spend time with people who are more awake, because that accelerates your awakening.
But yet at the same time, I am being exposed and having people come into my life that still do mirror me.
Right.
But now I know when to stay and when to just kind of keep moving, as opposed to
Right.
before I would just stay. I see it and then I keep moving.
Good. That's beautiful.
So,
Yeah, now there's no reason that, those who are more awake are thus more qualified to help others who are less awake if they're open to it.
Exactly. And I
So-
think that's a part of it too.
Yeah, and sometimes you're called to serve a person, and to shed your light with them and illuminate them as much as they're willing to be illuminated.
Yeah.
But in terms of who am I just hanging out with routinely, you are definitely, you're going to draw a different group of people the more you move into your higher consciousness.
Right.
Yeah. And again, none of this is to disparage anyone of lower consciousness. I know there's a zillion people more awake than I am. And it's just where we're at. We're perfectly in the space we need to be right now, but there's always upward movement. And I don't think awakening ever stops. I think no matter how blissfully one you are with all things, there's always another level that can open yet that is even more amazing than that one. And I don't think it ever stops. This is the definition of infinite. It always gets better than this. Okay, and I want to briefly touch on your Mercury, which is even more in the heart of the Grand Cross because he's at 13 and change. He's just slightly behind where the planets are lining up on the 22nd. And just to keep it super simple, Mercury is how you think and how you communicate. So I would guess in the last year or so you've probably had a lot of radical change in how you think about things. Are there a lot of new concepts you're working with now that you weren't so much a year ago?
Always.
Always.
Yeah. But
Okay.
they're not as radical, it's more grounded. I'm finding that I need to ground more.
Ah, okay. All right, good. So, and are you, now Mercury is also the communicator, are you sharing things that can help change people in a big way more in the last year? Are you being the mouthpiece for those ideas to help others?
More so, yeah, than I have in the past, I think, yeah.
Okay, good. So while Uranus and Pluto and the other guys are lining up on your Mercury, you can be the spokesperson. You have Mercury at the top of your chart. So clearly you're here to transmit information. Mercury is also in the 9th house, the house of publishing. And that's a real clear signal that as you gain these insights, you will be asked to share them with others. Okay, so any questions before we move on to the next chart? Who wants? All right, Mariah? Okay, so I know I have you in here already, so let's pull you up real quickly. That only took about 10 minutes, so that's a pretty good pace for what we're doing here. And we will wrap up by 9 in case anyone's wondering. I'm not going to keep you late. Should I choose McAndrew?
Make the other Meg Anderson.
The woman who changes her name. All right, so.
Only once.
All right, so let's see how you're doing. Let's look in the cardinals. Nothing in Aries. All right, Uranus and the moon are both in the line of fire in Cancer. Nothing in Libra. And in Capricorn, we've got a glyph I don't recognize. Oh, it's my cursor. What strange planet is that? Chiron, the wounded healer, about 3 degrees out. So now in order to figure out if Uranus is important, I mean it's not a personal planet, I was asked, is it angular or ruling an angle? It's not angular house, but Aquarius rising. Yep, so it's their chart ruler in modern rulership. So Uranus actually is kind of an important planet for her. So for purposes of time, astrologers always have to do triage and just get down to the most important things. So I would say in your case, I would say Uranus and the moon are where we need to place our attention. Okay. Now the moon I'm not going to talk about so much because I just talked about someone's moon. And we already know how to work with that. I'm just checking if your moon has a significant rulership. It rules your 5th house. It's in the 5th and ruling the 5th, the house of fun. So maybe you could use this revolution to say, I'm going to make more time to enjoy myself.
Yes.
That would be a great way to use this. Okay. Now in terms of Uranus, the chart ruler, now this gives us some new material to talk about. We would say that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign on her ascendant, the beginning of house number 1, and that's an angle. The angles in astrology are the power points. There's the beginnings of houses number 1, 4, 7, and 10. And the ascendant rules the mask or persona you show to the world, the image that people just kind of get from you when they first see you. In terms of your long-term reputation, that's the 10th house up here. But the first impression is here. So with these really powerful planets, you know, beginning to work your Uranus, they're not exact yet, but they will be, they're strong enough, and over the next 3 years, they're going to put a lot of energy, Uranus and Pluto, on that Uranus. So it's a time to, I would say it's a let your freak flag fly sort of energy. You mean you haven't yet?
Oh, well, you know, probably, but.
Now to be fair, Aquarius rising is already let your freak flag fly, you know, for the lifetime. Aquarius says, I'm supposed to be weird,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so I may as well show it.
Right.
So, but when you have, you know, the transit Uranus and Pluto actually lining up on Uranus, it gets much stronger. And you'll get great intuitive flashes from transiting Uranus as to how to fly the freak flag. Yeah. And Pluto opposing can say, okay, I'm here to let you dissolve away any inhibitions you have about letting your true self really come out and do its service. And remember, the highest of Uranus, as I mentioned earlier, is serving the collective. I may not have mentioned this. Serving the collective with your unique gifts. Because any of us can do mundane service that anyone can do. But if you have a unique gift or talent, I think that's because you're supposed to help people with it. So find your greatest thing, the thing you love to do the most, and how can I go help people with that? Because I think optimally service should be joyful. If you're saying, oh, I must suffer to serve, I mean, you can make that choice, but it's not much fun. You know, serve in the ways that make you joyous. And then your service will be so much better because there'll be so much energy and enthusiasm behind it. So that would be a great thing for you, Mariah, to really jump out and do that way.
Thank you.
I will also briefly mention your Chiron, which is the wounded healer planet. So you too are going to have about 3 years of a hoocha dump. Hoocha dump. Hoocha is a catchword word that means waste energy.
Oh.
You know, the stuff that you feel coming out your hands and feet sometimes when you're in an energy process. So just let it go.
Does that mean health issues?
Potentially. It depends whether there's anything that's out of whack. I would pay attention. If you get symptoms, I would not ignore them. I would deal with them in whatever way feels appropriate. But also Chiron on the high side is the mentor and the healer. I mean, Chiron in mythology was the centaur who trained the gods. You know, he was also one of the early astrologers. Yay! But you can now step much more powerfully into your own mentoring and healing abilities with Chiron receiving its strongest aspects of your lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can do that with it. Okay, so that's enough for you.
Thank you, that's funny.
All right, Royal. All right, I think I have you in here, my friend. Let's see. Well, we got a lot of royals. Wow. Let me put it in fresh. Hang on a minute. So we'll just say royal, and my apologies. So your date of birth is?
March 6, 74.
And your time of birth is?
5:16 a.m.
And your date, your city of birth?
Evergreen Park, Illinois.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got it 1 minute off. My Virgo moon objects. And the city is?
Evergreen Park, Illinois.
Okay. Oh, I'm going way too fast. I need to pay attention. I'm getting excited here. There we go. All right, so let's see what you're up to. Aries. Not really. Cancer, no. Libra, we have Vesta, and nothing in Capricorn. So I'm going to talk about an asteroid goddess. How about that? Okay. Vesta is an interesting asteroid goddess. This relates to the Vestal Virgins of Rome. Okay, the tenders of the sacred flame. And so the broadest meaning of Vesta is those who give of themselves to serve others. So are you feeling any impulses that way, stronger with these energies coming up on your Vesta?
Yes, I am, and I'm processing how to do that.
Okay, well your higher self already knows, so ask. Spirit, how should I serve? And then rest in your breath and see what sort of insights come in. And there's zillions of other ways to get that information too. But again, they're not exact yet. Uranus will not oppose this until the summer. Okay, so this is 3 degrees past roughly where the Grand Cross is lining up. So this is just the warm-up for Vesta. She'll start getting strong this summer and for the 3 years beyond that. Okay, so you got a little time to work out your greater service. Now, I will mention a more explicit meaning of the Vestal Virgins. In this case, virgin means something other than the popular term, because a virgin actually means a woman unto herself, and in these temples, I'm told, they were actually acting as tantrikas, where they were actually initiating men into sexuality and helping them understand it's not just about getting to the orgasm, it's about, you know, merging with the soul of your partner and moving into divine blending when you do that. So they were very powerful sexual servants in this context. And therefore, if you are called to move in that direction in any way, line up now, ladies. So this could be, I mean, who knows a tantrika in Asheville? I mean, there's quite a few around here, all right? So males can be tantrikas too, those who help others get in touch with their sexuality and come to harmony and peace with it. That's a very valuable service. So many of us have had sexual dysfunction issues early in life, and so many of us have been abused, male and female. We need a lot of helpers to help iron that out and smooth it out again.
That's a huge issue that's going on right now, is just moving into that sacred love.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
very big right
Yeah.
now.
And even if you just want to do it for yourself, it can be you moving deeper into the awareness that sex is not just, you know, erotic pleasure. It can move beyond the orgasm into the soul partnering.
Exactly.
And I suspect you're in that ballpark already. And that may go even deeper. So if you were called in that direction while Vesta's getting that strong stimulation, then that would be an excellent use of it. Okay. So, next chart. Thank you. All right, I saw your hand.
You should have it in there, Berna.
All right, we can do one or two more and then we'll wrap. We're at till. Okay, and your name again is?
Berna, Alex.
The first name is?
Alex.
Alex, thank you. And I apologize, I know I should remember that, but I don't. And your date of birth?
4155.
4155?
Yes.
And the time of birth?
654. You should have the chart
I probably do, but here I am putting it in. Is that AM or PM?
up in
Okay, and the city is?
Houston, Texas.
All right, let's see what we got going for you. I love how all these charts have different things to talk about. All right, so let's see how you're doing. Aries. The sun, the descendant. Whoa, we got a bunch on Aries. Okay, Cancer, we've got the midheaven. We have the ascendant itself, and nothing really in Capricorn. So one thing I want to mention here is all four of your angles are in the Grand Cross. Again, the angles are houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. So the following areas are up for revolutionizing for the next 3 years. The ascendant, the master persona you show to the world. And with these energies hitting the ascendant, you can be the agent of revolutionary change now, more than ever before. It's not just energy coming in, it's energy going out too. Okay? The fourth house cusp. This could be a relocation, a renovation, a redecoration. It could be your deep emotional stuff coming up to be cleared. Okay? It could be changes in the family in some way, either the birth family or the family you created by marriage. Okay? And then we have the descendant, all relationships, like we were talking about with Lynn. You know, release the ones that don't serve you, embrace the new ones that move you forward in your evolution. And the midheaven, we haven't really talked to midheaven yet in anyone's chart. This is the career point. This is your work out in the world, whether it's paid employment or volunteer work, doesn't matter. It's your reputation, it's the work out in public you're known for. So if you are employed, this can be a time of great shift in that. It could mean a different job. It could mean you're in the same job and you revolutionize how you do it. It could be a combination of both. It could be you doing 2 or 3 jobs at once. If you're not working, it can be a shift or an empowerment of the volunteer work you're doing. Again, with Uranus in the mix, just pop the intuitive flashes, and I would recommend just doing what they say. So that's the 4 angles being affected by the cross. And the sun, in astrology, has 2 primary meanings. It's the core of who you are as an ego. You are more than your sun sign. The entire chart, all of the planets, the signs, the aspects, and the houses are your ego. It's a vast, complex web of energies, not just a sun sign. Okay? And in terms of what sunshine should I go for a partner, don't even ask that question. It's irrelevant. When you look in synastry, relationship astrology, I've got like over 250 things interacting with each other. You know, there was actual combinations of planetary grid. So to ask this, what sun sign should I look for, is like saying I've got one piece out of a 250-piece jigsaw puzzle, and I think I can see the whole puzzle here. Don't use just sun sign for relationship astrology. It's just the very, very beginning. And it's usually not even the most important planet in the relationship chart. So that's my little screed on that. But in your chart, and anyone's chart, the sun is the core of your ego as well as your vitality. Okay? So, especially with Uranus on the sun, is it not true that you're being called to paradigm shift very quickly now? Your growth is very rapid. It's now so essential to follow your intuitive flashes. And are you doing that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Good.
Getting kicked if I don't.
Okay, good. Yeah, it'll kick you when you don't,
Yeah.
right? Because Uranus, you know, his high side is I'll give you the intuitive flash and I'll launch you into the new level of your awakening. Okay, here's your paradigm. Uranus is the planet with the quantum leap, the sudden aha. Okay, but if you get the intuitive flash, especially with the mind of your sun, and you don't do it, he may have to pull out the tough love. He may say, okay, let's give you some nervousness and irritability and anxiety and that, okay? And if you're catching that end of this, that's your message that there's probably an intuitive flash you're not following. Or again, Uranus wants you to individuate and let your freak flag fly, be who you really came here to be as a human ego. And if you're not doing that fully, the same symptoms may appear. And if you want to be sure you don't get any of those symptoms, then go ahead and serve the greater collective with your gifts. Those are the 3 Uranus flavors. Okay? Be your individual, unique self, follow your intuitive flashes, and serve the collective. And if you're doing all that with Uranus on your sun, then it'll give you those jumps up in your evolutionary growth. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what I would recommend there. We have 2 minutes for one more chart. You've heard of speed dating? This is speed astrology. All right. And your name is?
Chris, with a CH.
C-H-R-I-S?
Yes.
Date of birth?
5/24/52,
And the time of birth?
12:22 p.m.,
And the city of birth?
Santa Monica, California.
All right, let's see what you're up to. All right, Aries. Where's Aries? Nothing. Cancer, we have Uranus. Libra, we've got nothing really. We have Chiron. Chiron's really the big player for you, and Uranus is about, no, they're very close. Let's see if Uranus matters. Is he an angled ruler? Where's Aquarius? Oh, just missed it. 0 degrees, 6 minutes Pisces. So I would say Uranus is the less important player, and Chiron's going to be a little more important just because of his core meaning. He's also closer into the sun, so he bears more weight, all things being equal. So, wow, with Pluto on Chiron, and your Chiron is about 2 degrees prior to the Cardinal cross, which Pluto's been working him for a couple of years already. Have the last 2 years been real intense purging emotionally and psychologically?
Amazingly.
Like
When that Uranus-Pluto cross, that first one happened in June, my whole life fell apart. My whole
Yay!
life fell apart. Yeah, it's going to be really wonderful, but it's been a really hard couple of years.
Right, and I'm not saying yay facetiously, because it wouldn't have fallen apart if it were a solid structure. If it's falling apart, it's because it needs to be reassembled in a more harmonious way, right? And when you realize that and stop trying to clutch the old reality and you allow the new reality to manifest, then you'll get a better structure out of it. I remember I moved here to Asheville many years ago with a partner at the time, and at that time it was the best relationship I'd ever had, and I couldn't have imagined it ever having a better partner. After a year we broke up, and I thought, oh, well that's it, that's the best relationship I'll ever have. And 3 months later I met another woman, and I discovered that, oh my God, there's a whole level of relationship I never dreamed of. This is like spiritual blending. The other thing was just a great ego combination. And so I lost what I thought was so great, and it turned out I got something immeasurably more wonderful. So I wish that for you too. So remember too, as I said to someone else, I think Mariah, Chiron is you as the mentor and the healer. And this is the most powerful stimulus you'll ever get for your own mentoring and healing abilities to just launch into the stratosphere. So if you're called in those directions, I would definitely be juicing that up. Okay, that is all of our time. If anyone did not sign my email list, where did it go to?
I didn't see it.
Okay, so oh, I need the drawing. The drawing. Okay. All right, so just write royal down a minute. And do I have internet here?
Yes.
And we're going to do this with a random sequence generator. And is there a password?
It's wide open.
Oh, it's open?
Yep.
Okay, let me just find you. Are you ATT78? Oh, Colluminate.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was easy. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to number these. Well, I know the number. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 12 on the first page, and there's 3 on the second page. So I'm going to ask for a number between 1 and 15. And we do have internet. So, true random number generator. 1 is the minimum, 15 is the maximum, and the answer is 7!
Oh, that's good number.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's Jackie!
Jackie,
Jackie, congratulations. You've won a 1-hour session with me.
All right.
So catch me after and we'll set it up for you. Okay, thank you all so much. You have my card. If not, it's probably on a seat close to you. And I do astrology and shamanic healing and awakening activation. Please check out my website if you're interested, at the very least, to check those invocations out. And if I can ever be of service, please let me know. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's been such a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
And this video will be posted in the next few days on my site, and you can watch it again if you want. Thank you.